This first sketch on this upper housing, it is millimeters. Make sure that you are set to millimeters, grams, and seconds. I am creating a sketch in the front plane. I am going to create the two circles. I'm going to create a rectangle. I'm going to make the rectangle coincident to the origin. Throw on the dimensions. 120 on the outside circle. 30 on the inside circle. The rectangle is 4 tall. It is 150 wide. And I put in the 75 to center it. So I'm doing the full pieces of geometry, the circles, the rectangle, dimension it, constrain it. And then trim it. Then trim. Pretty cool. Sketch the whole thing with the circles and rectangles and then trim it. A lot easier than trying to draw each of the different features and get them lined up. This is going to get extruded, I believe, 80 mid-plane. Make sure it's mid-plane. So I'll show the sketch here. It's a mid-plane extrusion 80. Okay, so the first one that we did here is a mid-plane extrusion 80. I'm then going to go to another sketch, a sketch in the front plane. Look at that front plane, and I'm going to create a 3-point arc from this corner coming up, and what I'm doing is creating the path. So this line and arc, if you make them tangent, is my path. The radius of the arc is 100. The distance from the line, make sure you get the top edge, not the bottom. Things will go wrong. From the line to the top edge, 100. And then from the center to the end of the line is 81.5. That's just the path. It is in the middle because we did a mid-plane extrusion, and it's in the front plane. Now I need to make my profile up here at the end of this line. So this should be new to you. But in order to get that profile at the end of that line, I have to create a plane. So features, reference geometry, plane. If you select the line first, I don't think it really matters, line or endpoint. But if you pick the line and then the endpoint, it puts the work plane right, or sketch plane right on the end of the line. Select the line and the endpoint, and it'll make the plane perpendicular to the end through the endpoint that you select. And then you can make your sketch on that plane. I'm just going to make a rectangle. It's not touching the origin, I know that. But if I right-click, choose midpoint, hold the control key down, and select the origin, I can make them coincident. So I can put the midpoint of the top of my rectangle on the origin. I did that by right-clicking, selecting midpoint, and then hold the control key down and pick the origin. So if you right-click on a line, you can select its midpoint, and then you can make that point connect to it, the origin. The size of this rectangle 42 by 57.5. Did I do that right? Yeah, I guess so. The fillet is what, 15? So I do it with a rectangle and then throw the fillet on there. Because I have that midpoint selected, when I pick that top line, it's going to give me a message. Because I selected that midpoint, it's just telling you that when you put the fillet on there, it's going to change the location of the midpoint. But as long as you put a fillet on both sides, then the midpoint shouldn't change. So at this point, I've created a path and a profile. They are two different sketches. I had to put that plane on the end point of the line, and then within that plane I made my profile. With the two sketches, profile and path, I can now do a sweep. That sweep needs a profile, that's the second sketch I made, and a path, that was the first sketch I made, and I can sweep along a path. The profile must be perpendicular to the path. Okay, if it's and the profile does not have to touch the path, but it does have to be in the same plane as the endpoint. Did I explain that well enough? The profile doesn't have to touch the endpoint, but it does have to be in the same plane as the endpoint, perpendicular to it. You can have it follow the path. It can be normal to the path. You can have it twist along the path. Maybe not that much. Maybe it'll fail if I do that. You should be able to have it twist along the path. So I got it twisting, just not very much. Yeah, it's twisting, just not very much. So you can have it twist along the path. We want to keep it just in its defaults. After I'm done, I'll show you what guide curves are. So I want to make those two sketches and make that sweep. They are here. That's the first sketch and the second sketch in the PDF. So let me do this first. I have another one here. I have created actually four sketches. Excuse me. A sketch in my front plane, a sketch in an offset plane. I've created another sketch on the side, which I'm going to use as a guide curve, so you can understand what guide curves are. And then I have a simple arc sketch for one guide curve, and I have a more complex spline for another guide curve. If I go to loft, a loft is going to take two sketches. If I pick at this point on this sketch and this point a point on my right sketch and a point on my left sketch, I'll get it to loft between the two. Change shape from the circle to the rectangle. If you pick at opposite points in the loft, so say the top of the circle but the bottom of the you can get that loft to twist. You pick at one point, say in the top of one sketch, but a different point, say in the bottom of the second sketch, then your loft will twist. If it does twist on you, you don't have to redo anything in this program. Go back in and fix it. Grab the little point, bring it over the grip point or the handle point on the loft, and pull it around so that the loft is straight. To make you have less headaches, make sure that you pick at the top of each sketch, and then it won't twist on you. What are guide curves? Guide curves take this loft, but make that surface stretch out to the guide curve. So if you come down and pick in the guide curve box, you can get the loft to stretch out to that guide curve as it tries to make its way from one profile to the next. So this exercise doesn't have guide curves in it, but I know it's there in the dialog box for that loft, and I want to make sure you understand what it is. One of the other exercises I've given you is going to take a guide curve. Let's go back to our part we're working on. And I need 2 sketches. So the first one is just on the face of what we already have. So I'm going to pick on the face, turn it into a sketch, and convert it. Done. That's my first sketch. Okay, so I just pick the face, sketch, convert, and it gives me those edges in a new sketch. That's the first profile of my loft. I'm then going to offset a new plane, and I'm going to have to go back to the part to figure out the distance. It's 57.5. So I'm going to offset this out 57.5. That's my second, where my second profile is going to go. I'm going to select the plane, sketch on that plane. I need to connect the two together. If I was to change my original sweep, I want my loft to change too. So I'm going to take the top edge of my existing part and convert that into my new sketch. They are forever connected. If this top surface on this part is to move or change, then that line will move or change with it. Is that clear to everyone? But I don't want that line to be a part of my model. So I change it to a construction line. Convert it in first, change it to a construction line. Then I can go ahead and make my rectangle. It's just a sketch. I drew it out here in space, away from everything. And then I can connect maybe a center line coming up. Guys, maybe a center line coming up, so I know where that endpoint is. So I can connect again, just like I did on the last sketch. Right-click, midpoint, hold the Control key down, select the endpoint, make them coincident. So I've now connected my new sketch, my new rectangle's midpoint, to the original object. Then go ahead and dimension it. And put the fillets on it. Just a warning, it's because I'm changing the midpoint again. As long as I do both sides, my midpoint stays in the same place. 2 sketches. It's very important that you connect this sketch to that top edge. Now that I have the 2 sketches, I can go do my loft. Loft, if I pick this top edge and the side edge, twist. Ah, no big deal. Move it up, no more twists. You can change how it starts by changing the start and end constraints. You can change it from being perpendicular to being tangent just by changing, you can say a direction vector. You have to set a line. You can say normal to, which would make it tangent. A tangent to face. Normal to is going to come, 90 degrees off the profile. tangent to face is going to make the faces tangent as they go from the original object into the loft. For this exercise, though, they're having you just leave it at none. I just wanted to show you those options. They're having it leave the end constraints at none, and there's no guide curves. Just loft between the two profiles. So that's an introduction to sweeping and lofting. The rest of this exercise, you're going to just come up to the drawing and add to it. One of those is the fillets. If you put in a fillet, a constant radius fillet, and pick on this edge, it goes all the way around. Wrong. Change it and turn off the tangent propagation, which is, in other words, it's finding the edges all the way around automatically for you. Instead of letting it find the edges, we will change the radius to 5 and just go pick on only the edges that we want. So you're not going to pick on that bottom edge at the bottom flange, please. Do not fillet that. So don't let the program find it all the way around. Stop it by turning off tangent propagation and then go pick only the edges you want to have the fillet on. The other one at the top up here is, what is that, 50? Okay, so instead of doing the tangent within the loft, they're having you add the fillet on later. The last part I'm going to show you is the shell to remove the opening and 1, 2, 3 on the bottom. That shell is 2.5. And then you have a nice hollow. You have a few more things to do to it. You're going to have to cut this front face out. You're going to have to add back in the material that disappeared down here on the bottom, and then you're going to have to put the holes in. Questions?